Welcome back to NVC Dudes. I'm your host, James Prieto, and our guest today is Joe Waterdog Hoshka. Hey, Joe.
Hey, and I'm not your host.
Oh, you're not? I thought you
No,
were hosting the nature portion of this show.
I'd be glad to. One of my favorite things.
So, hey, we were talking before about our passions, and one of our intersections is nonviolent communication. So, what's your definition of NVC, which is a short acronym for nonviolent communication?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so many different things to different people, and it's been different things to me at different points along my NVC journey. At this point in time, it's clearly a consciousness. It's a way of thinking and being, and it has to do with being present. It has to do with being non-judgmental. It has to do with accepting what is. And this may sound cliche, but kind of being love. It's a practice of being love. I practice NVC, and it's a challenge, and it's a wonderful, lovely thing to aim for. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, would you like more on that, or how you feeling?
It's really up to you,
Yeah.
looking for the shorter version.
Yeah, I'm curious, but how would you encapsulate, what is NVC for you?
Yeah. And thanks for asking. And my definition has changed a lot through the years, but the one that I like the most these days, it's NVC for me is a way of focusing my attention on the things that support a natural giving and receiving, and a natural flow to life, a way of connecting to myself and to others that allows, this natural giving and receiving to take place. So,
yeah, and before we started recording, you said something. You were talking about a couple entities, and you're talking about how they both need what each other has. And I was thinking that what a perfect description of the place that NVC exists. It exists, I think, in this conversation, this giving and taking, and at that level, giving and taking kind of merge, and it's hard to know what is giving and what is receiving, because if you were to give me something, my receipt of what you give me could be a gift to you. And have you ever wanted to do something for someone, to give them support or a gift or something, and they've said no, and it's like, oh, that hurts that you didn't accept what I wanted to give. And so it gets very blurry as to what's giving and receiving, and that is kind of this zone that I like your definition, that it's would you say where a natural giving and taking is promoted or encouraged or supported?
Yeah, and the first part for me is equally important, is having some choicefulness on where to focus my attention. And so for me, having that emphasis on that I have choice to focus my attention on what I'm thinking, on what I'm feeling and needing,
right?
And to come to this place of, being really in touch with what's alive in me, like what feelings and needs are up for me, so that I can operate from this place of natural compassion, right? So once I'm in tune with my own stuff, I can get naturally curious about you. And it just makes that giving and receiving so natural.
I had delight 2 days ago. I'm attending one of your classes, and you were teaching this one component that I believe Jim and Jory kind of came up, but we're all standing on the shoulders of someone before us, and that they were too, of the vortex of submission. And I took that course, and it's such a beautiful invitation to really be aware of choice and where we might fall on one side to submission, where we submit to what we think somebody wants, or rebellion, where we perceive a demand, and it's like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. And so we get reactive because of the energy that we perceive as happening, instead of just accepting okay, well, maybe they really want something, and so they present it forcefully, but I'm just going to remain in choice and just do what really serves me well, and 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 the more that I've been practicing that, the more it keeps showing up, and I keep catching myself. It's like, oh, there's a little submission going on for me. There's a little rebellion, and I see it in other people too, and it's so subtle. It's there's like layers of the onion to go further, and deeper into choice, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And to make there's the whole choicefulness thing is so important, because I grew up with a lot of reactivity in my life, just kind of, and we get so many messages from our culture too. And if unless we're fully aware of our inner compass, right, the heart that we're all born with, that has really important information. And
yeah.
I wasn't taught to look there. I was taught to look out there, to follow whatever it is that other people are telling me to do.
I would love to talk about something. You invited me to think before we met today. I was like, what are what's NVC to me? And I didn't jot down much, but there's something I jotted down that's really alive for me lately. And just a little bit of background. My father grew up as a kid in World War II in Czechoslovakia, and the Nazis invaded the farm. This is his father and mother's farm. Wow. And the officers lived in their farmhouse with him and his parents and his sister. And I guess the regular infantry Nazis were living in their camped in their forest, and it was really brutal. And he brought that into how he fathered me. He felt it was really important to be very forceful about trying to make me into the best citizen he could. And I've been learning, and so I kind of just adopted that as my way of going about the world of, if I want something, being kind of forceful. And I didn't even realize how forceful I was. But NVC, I've been realizing I don't need to be so forceful. And I actually am finding that I'm getting more of what I really want through a process that is so simple and beautiful. So instead of telling, like, let's say I'd like something from you, James, instead of saying, you really need to do this because, and coming at it from that angle, if instead I say, hey, James, first of all, asking, is now a good time? And then saying, this is what I observed, and laying out the facts and saying, when you did that, I was really strongly affected. And this is how it affected me, and letting you know how it affected me. And then making a simple request of, now, typically nowadays, I would make a request of, how does it feel hearing that? And just have a little interaction. I get to know what's alive in you, and I get to learn. And I might even adjust what I started thinking I wanted. But I'm finding it's such a graceful and at the same time, more powerful way of just flowing through the world, because I'm not forcing things. Mm-hmm. There's more of a dialogue. And that heart that you were just talking about, we all have a heart. Quite often, it's the heart in the person I'm talking with that is responding because they care about how I'm affected,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not accusing them of anything.
To the flow of between people.
Yeah. And nonviolent communication teaches this at the get-go, but it took me years to really sink into the profound simplicity, ease, and power of that. Yeah. Cool. So I don't know if that makes sense. And I don't even know what is different today when I think about this than when I first heard about, the basic 4 steps that NVC is typically taught through of observation, feelings, needs, and requests. But because it's following that pattern: observation, the facts, feelings, what my response is, needs, kind of more the same, specifying what I'm looking for. But I don't know. But it's big for me. Very big.
And in these days, I don't even think of them as steps anymore, because I found that sometimes I can either skip or jumble them up if I need to. So
I don't think of them as
framework.
I don't think of them as steps anymore. I think of them as like a mental checklist, if you know, and just something to think about, not like a sequence or things that have to be done. It's, you know, especially if there's a little bit of chaos or maybe I'm feeling emotional, real short, simple checklist, you know, like, well, oh, what's going on for me? Or what's going on for the other person? And what are they needing? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe. I loved hearing that. And I love the depth that we were able to go into. And yeah, why don't we take a break, and then we'll be back with a little bit more with Joe Hoshka. Stick
Perfect.
around.